And there's more to it than that as we bring in Jonathan Conricus here in New York, the retired lieutenant colonel in the IDF, former spokesperson for the IDF, senior fellow now Foundation for Defense of Democracies, co-founder of Bottom Line Media. Welcome back. Haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
We used to talk all the time at the beginning of the war, certainly. Now, when you were, in official government capacity, you're looking in to some extent from the outside. And what do you make of these latest developments, these latest strikes?
Yeah, to put things into context for people who are visiting this, once in a while, this conflict, we have a peace or ceasefire agreement that was put in place with an American presidential seal and pressure on it to be successful. And basically, since Hamas returned 20 of the live hostages, that was a very big moment, Hamas has been violating the agreement systematically. They have not returned all of the the murdered hostages. There are still 13 bodies in Hamas captivity. And what we've seen earlier today and in previous days are actual attacks by Hamas terrorists or militias against Israeli troops. This last attack was in Rafah, and unfortunately with significant consequences on the ground. And what Israel is doing now is retaliating. And the reports of, Israel, the Israeli Prime Minister ordering attacks is Israel responding to what Hamas is doing. What you can see here is construction equipment that Hamas has been using. They've basically been putting on a show. They were caught red-handed a few hours ago, where they've been saying that we can't locate all of the bodies. So what Israel was able to do was actually to film Hamas dumping a body of an Israeli murdered hostage into a makeshift grave, covering it up, and then bringing the Red Cross observers to the location and then staging the unearthing of the body as if they've just found the body, which really goes to show how cynical Hamas is and how much of a show and, just lies are abundant here. Hamas has been claiming that they don't have all of the bodies. Evidence suggests differently.
But like I said, that was only part of it. These attacks on the Israeli soldiers, is that what really prompted the Netanyahu
strike? This is what triggered today's event. And, I think people in Israel understand that there is a lot of interest around the world and in Washington for this ceasefire deal to actually go from stage 1 to 2 and 3 and 4.
What would you say about the ceasefire? Some people look in and say, well, how's there a ceasefire? They're fighting. What's the status?
Well, the status is that it's being violated constantly by Hamas.
Would you describe it as still in place?
I would say yes. I would say yes. There's been more and more instances of violations by Hamas and then Israeli retaliations against it. And, every time it is violated, it becomes weaker. And the chances for an overall escalation, of course, rise. There's reality on the ground, which is rife with Hamas violations. And then there's reality in D.C. and other capitals that wants this deal to succeed. But something has to give. Either Hamas has to start implementing the deal, or we'll face other consequences and the ceasefire won't last.
So are you alluding to the fact that the Trump administration, because it wants that deal to succeed so badly, might be, in your view or Israel's view, letting Hamas away with too much? Is that what you're saying here? Or?
I mean, that is what we're seeing on the ground. Hamas, I think, understands that there is a great interest to see this deal succeed, and they are really pushing the envelope. They've been delaying. They were supposed to hand over the remains of murdered hostages within 72 hours. It's been 2 weeks, and there are still 13 Israeli bodies in Hamas captivity. And Israel knows and has told Americans and the other counterparts that we know that Hamas knows almost all of where the bodies are located. There's a few which we understand that Hamas doesn't have control of, but they've been delaying. And I think Hamas understands, they read the room very well, and they understand that they can get away with a lot of things. Eventually, it's brinkmanship.
How far can they push, do you think, if you're looking in on it? Because this is a question for the Israelis as well as the American administration, I would think, right?
Yeah, so far Israel is very disciplined, and I think working in very close coordination with the Americans and really doing only what is agreed upon beforehand with Americans at the military level and at the political level.
In other words, the U.S. would have known about this today?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what would you say about the odds of the actual ceasefire moving phase to phase and becoming something permanent? How do you feel about it today?
King Abdullah of Jordan, he gave an interview a few days ago where he was the first one to actually say out in the open that Hamas isn't going to disarm. They don't talk about disarming and they don't act as if they're going to disarm, and somebody needs to disarm them. What he also said, which I think is true, is that international observers, international peacekeepers, they are not going to disarm Hamas. So either someone who is stronger than Hamas will disarm them, or we face a reality that we have to go back to war.
So Israel's going to go back in, is what you're saying?
Something has to give. And if the deal is implemented, Israel will be super disciplined and it will make sure that everything is respected. If Hamas continues to violate, I don't think Israel will have too many choices. We're not there yet, but the things on the ground, they're leading towards that direction.
Okay, Jonathan Conricus, always good to see you
Likewise,
here in New York today.